Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DCEU Daily. And it's an edition of the DCEU Daily with a difference, because this is my favourite top 9 Batman films of all time, including The Batman. As most of you know, I have the privilege and the honour of watching The Batman, so it's on this list. So let's waste no more time and let's get into it. Let's start with number 9. Batman and Robin is probably a film most die-hard Batman fans hate. This is not a deep, dark dive, on Batman. This was a time where kind of Warner Brothers decided to bring someone in like Joel Schumacher to sell Batman toys, and this is what they were trying to do. So they threw so many things at Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, threw so many things at the wall and hoped something would stick. Unfortunately, with Batman and Robin, nothing stuck for most of blockbuster movie consumers, or especially Batman fans. But let me tell you this, I found it thoroughly entertaining. So this is not a great, awesome Batman movie that everybody loved, but it's thoroughly entertaining. George Clooney was cast as Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, because he was George Clooney, and at the time people loved him on ER and he was getting everything. Now George today makes jokes about his role as Bruce Wayne and Batman, and he's taken it kind of with lots of grace and humour, and I respect him for this. But even though Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze is really, really campy, I think I found Schwarzenegger very, very entertaining as Victor Freeze. The thing that I think works with Batman and Robin is the element of Alfred dying with this illness, and I think kind of the chemistry between the Alfred actor, is it Michael Gough, who had been in all those kind of movies at that time, and George Clooney really worked for me, and that element of the movie was very, very emotional. I like the opening action sequence with Chris O'Donnell's Robin and George Clooney's Batman and, Mr. Freeze, aka Arnold Schwarzenegger. I thought that was a great way to open up the movie. So even though it's bottom of my list, I'm not going to come here and throw hate at it. It's blockbuster fun. It's okay. It worked for me as a piece of entertainment, and that's it. Number 8, Batman Forever. Batman Forever stars Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne and Batman. This is a much better film than Batman and Robin, and I think the big tragedy of Batman and Robin is that Val Kilmer wasn't in that film, and I think it would have been a different beast. Val didn't want to make it. He and Joel Schumacher, I think, fell out, because I think that Val took Batman kind of seriously, rightly so, and Joel and Warner Brothers at the time, again, were just trying to sell toys. But Batman Forever is a much better movie. But again, too many big names. You've got Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. You've got Jim Carrey as Riddler. But I think if you enjoy a kind of campy Riddler, then Jim Carrey is very eccentric, very fun as Ed Nygma and the Riddler. Again, a really entertaining movie. You've got a great actress like Nicole Kidman as Dr. Chase Meridian. Ultimately, she's only there for her attractiveness. That's it. And that's what they were doing at that time. That's what Hollywood were doing. That's why I find it hilarious about, how they're boasting about representing women and equality and all of that today, because that's not the attitude they had in years gone by. But Batman Forever, like Batman and Robin, is a hugely entertaining movie, a much better movie. Val is a much better Batman Bruce Wayne than George Clooney. In fact, I really like Val Kilmer. I think he was an excellent Kit the Car in the Knight Rider revival as well. And he's done so many things within the industry. Val's a good guy. So yes, Batman Forever, like Batman and Robin, thoroughly entertaining. Again, a bit more of a deeper dive into the Batman psyche than Batman and Robin. But again, it's not one of my favourites. Number 7, this is going to shock you, The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight Rises, in fact, is a really, really good film by Christopher Nolan. It's the final part of his Dark Knight trilogy, but I think this list isn't about a universal opinion. I want to warn you about that. It is my opinion, and my opinion is The Dark Knight Rises isn't one of my favourite Batman films, but again, it is a deep dive into Batman, but there's a lot of things I do not like about The Dark Knight Rises. One of the things I don't like is Catwoman. I think she's not a great Catwoman, because this is what I feel about Christopher Nolan. He was kind of embarrassed about elements of the Rogue Gallery. So she's Selena Kyle. She's a thief and everything, but she's not really Catwoman. And they're trying to convince us in this film that there's chemistry between these two actors, between these two characters in Bruce Wayne, aka Christian Bale, and Catwoman. I didn't see it. I didn't like that element. I hate the end scene of them being together happily ever after. They kind of kill Batman off in this movie, but then it's either a dream sequence where they're happily ever after, or it's real. I don't know. I didn't like it. I think I've mentioned this on my videos before, that this movie was messy for Christopher Nolan, because we know that he and David S. Goyer had problems with this movie. They had writer's block. This is how David came up with the Man of Steel script during that writer's block. But it does have a deep message in this film, and I like that element of it. I didn't hate Tom Hardy's Bane like a lot of people did, and I certainly, unlike some, could understand what he was saying. So it's a really good Christopher Nolan movie, but unfortunately for them, The Dark Knight was so good and so popular, they were going to have to do something special. And personally, I felt The Dark Knight Rises was going through the motions. Number 6, The Dark Knight. Yes, that's not high on my list either. And that's going to shock you as well. Again, this is my opinion, not your opinion, not a universal opinion. I like The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is a very good movie and a very good comic book movie. But unlike Batman Begins, I felt that Christian Bale was like a guest star in his own movie. I'm sure that he had much more face time than someone like Heath Ledger, who seemed to have more face time, but I don't think he did, and someone can tell me that as well in the comments. But this didn't feel like a Christian Bale starring movie, and that's one of the things that I hold Batman Begins in such high esteem, that even though The Dark Knight is absolutely a great movie, for some reason it's not one of my favourites. And I think it's because I'm comparing it to Batman Begins, which is one of my favourite Batman live action experiences of all time. And that's why it's at number 6. It really is a great movie. One of the disappointments for me is it ends so well. I love cliffhanger endings, but I think kind of the explanation of that cliffhanger in the next film, The Dark Knight Rises, really disappointed me. And that's one of the reasons The Dark Knight Rises is so low on my list. Yeah, so I think The Dark Knight is an excellent movie. People are right to put it up there on top of their Batman lists and movie lists. But for me, it's not one of my favourites ever. And again, that's just my opinion. And people are not going to like this, some people. BVS is above The Dark Knight. It's at my number 5. Batman vs Superman is absolutely, almost certainly, a Batman movie. But I think that Superman gets as much on a narrative level in this movie. A lot of people don't like this movie. A lot of people love this movie. But I think it represents Batman brilliantly. Because if you think about The Dark Knight Rises, that's also looking at Batman several years into his career as an older Bruce Wayne and an older Batman. I personally think BVS did a bigger job at the older, bitter, older Batman than The Dark Knight Rises did. And I think BVS is a fascinating movie. I think it's a fantastic movie. It's a great sequel to Man of Steel, but again, it's not to everyone's cup of tea, so it's at my number 5. Number 4, Batman 89. In fact, you know, the last director pre-Snyder to actually be a Batman fan, and Snyder's definitely a Batman fan, was Tim Burton. Tim Burton made the first live-action Batman movie, and Batman '89 is a fabulous movie, and it's at number 4, and it's not number 1, it's not in my top 3, but I have a lot of respect for what Tim Burton did with this movie. It's an interesting movie. I don't really know, is it year 1, is it year 2? It's kind of more year 1 than year 2, or is it year 2? I don't know, you decide. I think Michael Keaton is a fabulous Batman and a fabulous Bruce Wayne, and Jack Nicholson is a really, really awesome, epic Joker. I think this movie is very clever. It has a lot of famous people in this film. I mean, this is a film where Jack Nicholson gets billing over Michael Keaton, but Michael Keaton is terrific. You've got great iconic older actors like Jack Palance as well, but you've got a lot of famous people in this movie. It's a fabulous Batman movie. It's a great attempt at the first live action Batman movie. These are days without CGI, with not much pressure on comic book adaptations and comic book movies, but it is a fabulous movie. It's a fabulous first attempt, and I think it's historically one of the best Batman films ever made. Now, my top 3. Number 3 is Batman Returns. I have got a lot of time for Batman Returns. You've got Keaton back. You've got Michelle Pfeiffer as Selina Kyle and Catwoman. You've got Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Oswald Cobblepot. You've got an all-star cast. I prefer Batman Returns to Batman '89. Batman Returns had really, really negative reviews. I don't think it made the money of Batman '89. In fact, I know it didn't. But I just prefer the movie. Lots of people call Batman Returns overstuffed. I don't feel that Batman Returns is overstuffed in any shape or form. I just think it's a greatly paced movie with some brilliant actors, with some iconic Batman characters from his rogue gallery. Again, this felt less of a Michael Keaton vehicle and more of a Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito vehicle, but I think this film really works. I think this film works much more for me as a sequel than The Dark Knight does to Batman Begins. That's just my opinion. Again, that's a hot take. Most people won't agree with that. Now, Superman is my number 1 character of all time, but I love Batman. I think Batman is awesome because he's kind of you and me in the world that we live in today. He sees all this shit going on and he decides to do something about it. But Batman Returns is such a fun, comic book, superhero costume character, blockbuster and sequel, and I think it's brilliant. So there are 2 Batman movies to go. So who is that? Number 2. I really hate when people do, the best movie lists when a new movie of said character comes out and they put that new movie at the top. Everyone's putting Spider-Man No Way Home at the very top. Spider-Man No Way Home isn't my favourite Spider-Man movie of all time. It's great that we got all the Spider-Men together, but no way or shape or form, in my opinion, is Spider-Man No Way Home than Raimi's Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. But again, that's my opinion. So I'm actually going to contradict what I've been saying, because at number 2 is Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins is my favourite Christopher Nolan Batman film, and until the Batman Begins was my favourite Batman live action movie of all time. Batman Begins does so many things right, and as far as I'm concerned, it does nothing wrong. I don't necessarily think that Christopher Nolan is a hardcore Batman fan like Zack Snyder, Matt Reeves or Tim Burton are, but certainly I think with the help of David Goyer and his knowledge of comics and all the research they did together, they get Batman Begins right. And this is an examination of Batman, but really Batman Begins is really Bruce Wayne's story more than Batman's story. We don't see Batman until I think an hour into the movie. This feels like Superman the movie, where they're introducing, Clark Kent and the Kryptonians and all of that. And Batman Begins sets the scene for, you know, Batman going forward. I love the flashbacks with his father. I think they're so emotional and so beautiful. I think the music is absolutely fantastic. The action is great. But as I say, Batman Begins for me is an emotional movie, and it really makes you feel for the plight of Bruce Wayne and what he's up against. The fact that he's going around all the world examining and researching the criminal fraternity and even becoming, you know, part of that fraternity is not lost on me. When he's caught stealing something from Wayne Enterprises and he says something, and the guy says, the copper in China or wherever says, tell that to the bloke you stole this from. Well, in fact, he's stolen it from himself. Again, a great cast in Batman Begins. Rutger Hauer is absolutely fantastic in this movie. Liam Neeson starts off as a mentor and is revealed as Ra's al Ghul. It's a really good movie with a great cast. It is my second favourite Batman movie of all time. Right, I think you all know what my number one is. I've broken all my rules. My favourite Batman movie of all time is The Batman. I haven't sat there for a long time and saw a movie that sucked me in for all the right reasons. This is a horror movie, but it's an emotional movie, and there's also an element of a love story. This film is also a love story, a horror movie. How can I compare this film? Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's what this film reminds me of. There's a huge, you know, horror element in Bram Stoker's Dracula, as you would imagine. But there's also this love story, right? And it goes deep within Bram Stoker's Dracula and within that movie. And it's the same with The Batman. The Batman has so many different elements to it, and it's got to do a lot of things. It's introducing a new Batman, a new Gotham City, a new DC universe, a DC brand new Earth 2, which is going to be under the remit of Matt Reeves himself. Matt Reeves does something that no one else has ever done, making a Batman movie. And it's not about being different just for the sake of it. And I think once you all see this movie, you're going to understand why this is my favourite Batman movie of all time. He has taken risks, but not to be controversial or divisive. And he's done so many right things here. And we've discussed the no-kill policy. But as I say, this film is going to be so many different things to so many different people. And it's very difficult to talk about this film without giving things away. And I don't want to do that. But there are going to be twists and turns and revelations. You are going to be shocked by this film, but this movie will also break your heart and make you cry. As Matt Reeves has said himself, he wants to take Bruce Wayne and Batman and put him through the mill. He really wants to make him suffer and evolve his character, and also examine and analyse this character, not just via this movie, by more Batman movies from Matt Reeves and the spin-offs, of course, on HBO Max. And nobody knows if we'll see Bruce Wayne or Batman in those spin-offs. We'll have to wait and see for that. So The Batman is my favourite live-action Batman movie of all time. I'd like to know your list. Of course, most of you, probably none of you watching, have seen The Batman, so it's not going to be on your list. It shouldn't be on your list, really. But let me know what your top Batman movie moments and movies are of all time in the comments below. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. Until then, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.